Hi, I'm Grady Cullen in the CapeCod.com News Center, and welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by a special guest from Eversource. Do you mind introducing yourself for our listeners?
Hey there, Sean Tully, Manager of Electric Mobility for Eversource.
Awesome, and thank you so much for joining me in studio for this conversation.
Great, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
So we have had a lot of developments as of late with the state's goals of hitting net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and advancements now in EV technology. We wanted to bring you in and talk a little bit more about how things are going from the utilities standpoint when it comes to electric vehicles, the infrastructure involved. Just to start off, we wanted to talk and ask a little bit more about how big of an impact does transportation have on greenhouse gas emissions? And in general, what is Eversource's priorities or general game plan when it comes to how they're involved in EVs?
Yeah, so over the course of the past 20, 25 years, there's been really a lot of really great reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in the commercial building space, residential buildings, building heating and cooling, and now the transportation sector is really the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, about 40% of all the total greenhouse gas emissions in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So, we were really working with our regulators in partnership of, since we have a lot of those market transformation programs that we've done through energy efficiency, now to focus on electrification and decarbonization as we look to transition a lot of that transportation sector to a different fuel type. So we've done that over the past 5 years through our first phase of our Make Ready program, which is really focused on commercial and industrial public charging to really address the range anxiety. And now we have a lot more exciting opportunities and solutions coming to our customers across our electric service territory in Massachusetts.
That is awesome. Not to ambush you with data questions so soon in the interview, but do you have a rough estimate of how many EV charging stations at least Eversource is responsible for on Cape Cod so far?
Oh, sure, yeah. So across our service territory, there was about 4,200 that are in the majority of them in eastern Massachusetts. About 20% of the total investment that we've done was in environmental justice communities. So really enabling the charging for those areas. A lot of those environmental justice communities are in Barnstable, Hyannis area here for those folks that are looking to charge, and then. The great majority of the charging stations that were installed on the Cape and the Martha's Vineyard were, mainly municipal projects. So the Barnstable County offices, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, Marine Biological Labs, and then also, for some of those folks traveling, for over the summer and the on season, we are working with MassDOT on standing up some chargers at some of the rest areas, like in Barnstable.
Mm-hmm. It is very interesting. You mentioned that range anxiety, and that seems to be a major hurdle for people who are looking to upgrade their cars and consider a new way of transport. Essentially, that's unique and now foreign to them. Essentially, at what point do you think we're starting to reach that hurdle across that hill when it comes to overcoming some of that range anxiety? Would you yourself feel comfortable getting in an EV and going for a road trip in Massachusetts, Cape Cod region?
Yeah, I'm not a Cape resident. I live up closer to Boston, but drove my electric vehicle down here today for this interview, and really with a lot of the vehicle availability that's coming on the market now, the range is getting better. There's a lot of options for consumers, to pick what really works for their situation, their lifestyle. Plug-in hybrids, had a lot of interest with a lot of the trucks now that are coming on the market, like the Ford F-150 Lightning and the upcoming Chevy Silverado EV. And something that people need to really keep in mind is you're really charging as you are staying at a location. So, question I get a lot is like, well, how long does it take to charge? Mm-hmm. When I come home from commuting to the office, it takes me 2 seconds to charge. I pull in the driveway, plug in, and then I go in the house and say hello to my dog, start getting ready to cook some dinner. And, I'm able to replenish the energy that I use during that day overnight while I'm doing a lot of other activities and getting ready for the next workday. So that's something that people should really keep in mind is like, you don't really need to go to that as you're traveling from A to B. Go to that third location to refuel the vehicle. A lot of the charging you'll be able to do overnight at your home.
It's very interesting, yes, and you also mentioned a few specific vehicles. I have to be careful not to turn this into a car talk podcast,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But that is so the overnight charging. I know that there's the level 2 versus level 1 charging ports.
Hmm.
Just for people who aren't familiar, can you elaborate more on that? As I look on the maps, we'll see like level 1 in this location, level 2 in that location. What is the difference?
Sure. Yeah. To put it into kind of a metric that's easy for folks to understand. So level one charging is really a wall outlet like you have in your home, or it might be in your garage or outside your home or business, and that's about 15 amps, and it can on average replenish about 5 miles of range per hour of charge. So level two is then 240 volts, similar to a dryer outlet in your home, and it's about 25 miles per hour that you're charging. So, when we look at some of the mileage and the average mileage from the registration data that folks are traveling, even now that the world's opening back up after the pandemic, things are returning to normal. People are commuting back to the office. The average commutes are about 45 miles a day. So when you get home or you're at your residence at night, it's going to be about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, to charge that with a level 2 charger that you plug in at your home. And so really we see that a lot of the majority of charging that people are going to be doing is with level 2, and DC fast charging, that's really going to be really for longer distances. For folks that are deciding to, they live in like Mid Cape and they're going to drive up to the greater Boston area, or to New York State, or up to Vermont, New Hampshire. That's when they'll utilize that DC fast charging to really top you up on your way till you get to that destination, and then you can fill up overnight again.
All right. Armed with that knowledge now, do you mind elaborating more on what Eversource is doing for the Cape and Islands region when it comes to specific projects, infrastructure improvements, even just over the past few years as part of this Make Ready program, which we should probably elaborate more on as well? Can you just give us more details in question?
Sure. Yeah. So we recently finished our first phase of our Make Ready program. It was a $55 million investment, mainly in publicly accessible charging stations. So that was really for commercial customers. So your businesses, municipalities, and retail property management, those kind of customers. So now we've really expanded that to light duty fleets and also residential programs. So we have some incentives available up to $1,400 for residents to wire up a level 2 charging station in their home, and it really is going to help defer a lot of the cost to have a licensed electrician come out and install that at your residence. So there is also a lot of people think they could get by if they have a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So that's a vehicle that it has a gasoline engine and a battery as well, and there's typically 25 to 30, maybe 50 miles of EV range, and then it would switch over to an internal combustion engine. And a lot of those folks say okay, the battery's very small, maybe I'll just get a level 1 vehicle. A lot of the folks I know that have plug-in hybrids, there is a lot of advantages to having a level 2 charging station installed in your home. It really gives you the ability to if you go out, run some errands, drive 10, 15 miles, you come home, you're able to replenish the battery in an hour, half an hour, and then if you go out to dinner or something, or do some other errands, go visit a friend later in the day, you have a full battery again, and you'll be able to do all of your driving around on electric power and not use any gasoline.
So with the net zero greenhouse gas emissions goal for the state by 2050, we also have the shorter term goal of 2035. The state is going to ban the sale of every new vehicle sold by 2035 will have to be net zero greenhouse gas emissions. You can still buy old combustion vehicles used as unaffected, but I wanted to ask, in that kind of long-term goals between now 2035 and potentially 2050, though that's way farther out, how is Eversource kind of plugging into that, either communications with the state or any other programs that you have lined up specifically in that longer-term goals? Can you just elaborate for us?
Sure. Yeah. So, I spoke a little bit about, the support that Eversource has for customers to set up a charging station at their home. So when they're ready, to make that new purchasing decision on and perhaps consider an electric vehicle as their next car. We have that support for getting a charging station at their home, and certainly getting more public charging stations out there in the world to help address that range anxiety issue. The Commonwealth also has the More EV program that is run by the state for vehicle incentives for the cars themselves. Just something I can add is that went to a point of sale incentive, I think, in the very near future. So you'll be able to have that taken right off the price of the car when you're working at the dealership, and that's I believe for new and used vehicles as well. So Eversource and National Grid both are in constant communication with planning for electrification and decarbonization in our electric service territory across the state to meet these state policy goals. We have system planning folks that have been working on modeling and forecasting what that load growth and what the needs are going to be, not only to meet the electrification of transportation but also building heating. And that really all went into a recently filed electric sector modernization plan that all of the utilities in the Commonwealth, worked on collaboratively and filed with our regulators, and is going to be going through some review and consideration going into the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's very interesting. This is purely just a career question, essentially, but it's not like we've ever experienced a whole changeover in industry like this before when it comes to one type of power to another, when it comes to expanding the EV versus moving away from fossil fuels. Is there any kind of precedent or unique challenges that have come with this just from your personal standpoint in this sector? Some interesting stuff you maybe didn't anticipate or have looked forward to overcoming if there's been some successes?
Yeah, there's just there's a lot of education that's needed. There's a lot of confusion, in the market about, we've had some webinars, some residential webinars that we've done, and really it's always eye opening to me some of the questions that come out of that. We'll get questions from customers in these webinars that are like, can I still charge my car if it's raining or snowing outside? How much does the cold weather affect my range? Is it going to be cut in half? Is it safe to park inside a garage? So some of these questions that come up, there's a lot of education there, with customers, but also a lot of the other, our business partners and a lot of the other folks that are all engaged with us to make this program successful. There's a lot of stuff that goes into installing, a charging station. Working with your municipality, pulling a permit, going through the zoning and permitting process can be difficult sometimes. But we're continue to work with our communities to bring these solutions to our customers.
Mm-hmm. I can't help. I have to ask, does the cold weather impact the battery, or is that those are some very interesting questions that have been raised.
It does. So there is a little bit of a reduction in the range, when you plug it in the cold weather, and that's for a few reasons. There's seat heaters and certainly the cabin heat, but there's sometimes some systems to condition the battery, to make sure that it stays at a good temperature. So there are some things you can do to mitigate this, though. One of the things I really love about having my EV is you're able to, when you're plugged in, you're able with a lot of these vehicles to precondition the car. So you can 5-10 minutes before you leave, you can go through the settings on the car and turn on the air conditioning, turn on the seat heaters, and so you're able to precondition the car before you unplug it from the charging station, and that will help extend the range in those seasons where you are using the air conditioning on the car or the heating to stay warm.
Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of answering all my emails on my phone before I disconnect to get on my morning commute every morning. That is very interesting. So thank you for answering that question. So as well, the installation process, I'd love to know a little bit more about the details. We don't have to dive into the exact chemical makeups of lithium batteries this time around. That'll be for next time. But we did want to ask more about what are the specifics for, do you need special training? Do you need to have a whole new course for Eversource engineers? What goes into the technological standpoint and finding the staff, the experts for these initiatives?
Yeah, for Eversource, we really, it goes through our regular new customer connect process for a lot of our commercial customers. So if we'll have a business that is looking to install a charging station and they engage with us in our program, they'll submit an application, and what we'll do is get a pre-assessment done by our distribution engineering team. See what the point of interconnection with the electric system looks like, what that requested load looks like, and then what upgrades are needed. If we can just install the service off the existing transformer that's on the customer property, or we might need to upgrade that. So once we get that feedback, we'll give that to our electricians. Some of which are on a bench that if a business doesn't have an electrician, doesn't have a relationship with an electrician, we can help recommend some. But then also the larger electrical contractor, community can participate in the program. We'll feed that information to them, and they can submit a proposal. And typically, the most disruptive piece is the trenching and site work. There is installation of conduit and wire, to the parking space, and installing, protective bollards and the bases to complete the make-ready work, so the customer can install the charging station and activate it. At home for the residential customer, it might look a little different. Certainly. Your driveway may be right on the side of your home, and you just need to kind of go through the wall because the electrical panel's really close. But a great way for residents to start, great first step, is to get in touch with a licensed electrician. Have them come over to your home and do what's called a load calculation. So what they can do is take a look at your existing panel and see if you have sufficient capacity there and what upgrades may be needed. Some customers may only need to just put in a breaker and install some conduit and wire out to where they would install the charging station at their home. Others may need to upgrade their panel depending on their situation. But it's important to have a licensed electrician take a look at that. And one thing to keep in mind is depending on your driving habits and what your average commute and daily driving looks like, you may be able to set up the charger to a lower amperage that's available in your panel. A typical level 2 charging station is a 40 amp. It comes off of a 40 amp breaker. But if you're driving, 20, 40 miles a day, and you have 30 amps available, at the panel, that may work for you. So you may be able to use that, and that would certainly, overnight have enough power to fully charge the battery.
It's good to know there's that modularity, that more of a spectrum when it comes to refueling. After all, you go to the pump, you don't have to get the exact amount of gasoline that goes into your full tank every time. So that is interesting to note. Is there any other surprises that kind of come with some frequently asked questions, essentially, either with the installation, or do you offer tools that might inform people better when it comes to what EVs to purchase, or just what are some of the surprise hurdles that maybe you've been hearing more about as well? Some questions that you might want to answer now while we have you on the mics.
I think I just touched on it, is creating, thinking about creating this system, and thinking about what your driving habits look like, and you don't necessarily have to get a very high powered charger for your electric vehicle. It's a common term in the industry is EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment. That's really what what people colloquially call the charger is. But a lot of these electric vehicles, the charger is actually on the car, and they're typically sometimes 32 amp, 40 amp, and some of the larger newer vehicles might have a 80 or 100 amp charger on board. So one thing to take a look at is take a look at what the onboard charger is. Talk with your dealership and kind of understand that, because if you have a vehicle that has a 40 amp charger and you buy a 80 amp EVSE, you could certainly install that and be ready for the future for a larger vehicle, or one that can charge a little faster. But it'll be governed by the charger that's on the vehicle. So even if you have an 80 amp EVSE, it'll charge the vehicle at 40 amps if that's the onboard charger size. So a lot of things to consider. Again, talking with your dealer and talking with a licensed electrician can really help answer a lot of these questions for you.
That is very interesting. Is there any more information available online through Eversource? You wanted to highlight either resources like maps of charging stations or information more about the technology behind it. If people maybe have caught a few things here, maybe had a few more questions or things we might not have covered here in this particular interview, can people go find out more online?
Yeah, we have a few online resources available. So we do have some information on the Eversource website. We also have a website, chooseev.com, that can help do some vehicle comparisons and some other information when you're just starting out to help answer a lot of those questions. I find the best resource for people if you want to see kind of charging stations in the public that are out there. Plugshare.com is a really great resource. It's an open source website. People can post reviews of charging stations, kind of help give you sometimes some tips on where things are, because sometimes you'll go into a city and you'll go into an underground parking garage, and the charging station or the EVSE might be on the second floor, it might be on the third floor. So sometimes if there isn't some really good descriptors, somebody will be a good Samaritan and chime in and say like, oh, it's in the when you go down the ramp on the third level, it's kind of over on the right. So they'll also talk about if they had a good charging experience there or not, if it was well lit, and some of the things like that.
Very interesting. It's going to be a very. It's interesting to see maybe more community resources developing over the next few years, especially as we approach that 2035 goal by the state, what develops naturally. So as well, I'm just going to break out the crystal ball with Eversource while we got it here. Are we going to be just seeing a gradual moving away from like gas stations, essentially? People, you think, just charging up at their shops that they work at or their place of business or at home, and we're going to see a little bit more of direct through line traffic? Has there been any background conversation with Eversource of what the future of the roadways might be?
Yeah, well, we're certainly on our side really preparing, and a lot of our system planning modeling is looking at what does 100% electrification of transportation look like, and that goes beyond like a lot of what we're talking about today with passenger vehicles. That's aircraft, a lot larger medium duty, heavy duty fleet vehicles. Potentially, there's been some very, very high level conversations we've been having with certain ferry customers that are on the Cape of what would it look like for electrification of the ferries between the Cape and the islands. So there, a lot of this stuff is coming. As far as gas stations totally going away, I don't want to speculate too much, but I imagine people will have their vehicle, maybe their second car. A lot of people, I think, will, if you're a 2-vehicle household, maybe you'll take a step for a while. You'll have one EV and one gas car, and that'll be what you have for a while. And certainly speaking for myself, I before I had an EV and I love my electric vehicle, I always had a manual transmission car. So I'm sure there's other people out there that'll be kind of nostalgic for that kind of experience, and they'll need some place to refuel those.
Understandable. I'm sure we have a lot of old school drivers here on the Cape and Islands region, but it's very interesting. If you don't mind, I'd love to actually talk more about some of the ideas that Eversource has been having between the electrification of aircraft and the ferries. That it's very interesting. So it's going to be this slow process, I'm sure. Has Eversource kind of been considering some general outline timelines of maybe when they'd like to see either their own personal goals of EV? Is there like a number of charging stations they'd like to hit by 2030? Stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah. So we're really focused right now primarily on our phase 2 program, which is going to go through 2026, and that's going to enable 8,000 public charging stations, across our electric service territory. National Grid has their piece and their goals as well, and then we're really looking to expand a lot of that charging, for residents, and also fleet programs and equity pilots, for those environmental justice customers that maybe aren't in a position right now that they could purchase an electric vehicle, but we want to look to see how we can address the fleet vehicles, commercial fleet vehicles that are located in or operate in those environmental justice communities, so those customers can get the benefits of the cleaner air, reduced emissions, and electrification as well.
Mhm. Now, last question. This is more to do with the general Eversource supply, essentially. There's been a lot of efforts towards improving reliability across the Cape. There's a battery project in Provincetown. I'm assuming those also play a big role in making sure that EV vehicles are going to be safe, reliable, good to go. So is Eversource also investigating and investing in making a more reliable Cape and Islands region, Northeast region when it comes to making sure that then transport doesn't stop if there's any kind of power outages, stuff like that?
Yeah, there is. Thank you for bringing up the Provincetown battery project. That was a great example of what we're doing to really ensure safe, reliable, and steady electric supply to our customers. There's a lot that's included in that electric sector modernization plan. From battery technologies, some of the electric vehicle things that we're talking about here today, but also, kind of some of the nuts and bolts, in improvements to the transmission and distribution systems. For example, one of the things that's included in that is, the need for, transmission to, move some of the renewable energy that we're installing in like southeastern Massachusetts and western Massachusetts throughout the Commonwealth to be able to meet that load growth and be able to use that in a cleaner way than other generation sources.
Thank you very much. It's about all the time that we have, I'm afraid. But if you had anything else that you wanted to highlight for our listeners before we wrap up, I would love to know any more details that you have, either about ongoing projects and initiatives or just any other resources you wanted to share for us.
Just maybe a call to action. We have a lot of pre-approved funds from our regulators, $188 million in residential and commercial funds. I have a staff of folks eager to help you meet your electrification goals. So hope to hear from you soon, and happy charging.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Sean, for joining us for this conversation. It's greatly appreciated.
Great, thanks again.
I'm Grady Collane, and this has been Sunday Journal.